Hey, Baruch Levi, B here from Soul Centered. Soul Centered is a center for the afternoon of life. That's midlife onwards. We guide people through the midlife process and into the afternoon of life, through the afternoon of life, really believing deeply that it is the best time of life if we navigate it with purpose and passion. We can feel a sense of power that we've never felt before in the morning of life. And so this week, we did a podcast on a conversation around morning rules, the morning of life, up till midlife, 40-ish, and prior to that, is a time of different rules than the afternoon of life, or at least they should be different rules than the afternoon of life. In the morning of life, we're busy becoming and doing and accumulating, and they have their place and their purpose. They're necessary. However, there's obviously a consequence to being, as the Dalai Lama said, human doings versus human beings, and that is we forget. We forget who we are. We forget why we're here. I mean, isn't that what a midlife crisis really is about? Is this feeling like, oh my God, I've forgotten, right? I think of the Talking Heads song, letting the days go by. This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. How did I get here? And it's this realization that we've forgotten, which means we haven't forgotten. We've still remembered, but it feels like we've forgotten. So many people I counsel in the afternoon of life, or certainly around the noontime, the midlife hour, is grappling with this idea of who am I and what am I and why am I here? Is this all I'm here for? And we forget. Now, forgetting isn't bad. It just is part of the process. We need to forget in many ways. There's a great Kabbalistic tale about before birth, we are these pure beings, these souls that know everything, right? Because we're in the form of soul, not body. And yet we choose to come here. And right before we choose to come here, an angel touches our lip. And that's why you have this little dent right here. There's a word for it. I can't remember. I can never remember the word for it. Something. Anyways, this dent is the angel that touched you. And in that moment, the angel says, shh, don't tell your secrets. Right? You know everything. And in that moment, we forget. And we're put here to remember because there's great power in remembering. Right? We're here for free will. My teacher, Dr. Viktor Frankl, says that's the ultimate expression of a human being, of our soul. And our soul's capacity is to choose. How can you choose if you know everything? You have to go through this process of forgetting. And the morning of life gives us that process and that opportunity, and we forget. And then we choose and we remember slowly. Hopefully we remember. And in that moment, we become powerful. We become godlike. God's partners, the divine partners, because of our power of choice. Now, again, we aren't totally lost and having forgotten everything, because there's always this tug, I call it the tug, within us, something tugging on our soul. Brene Brown talks about it as a whispering. She wrote a great blog on midlife. I think it's called The Midlife Unraveling. And in it, she talks about the whispering sometime in your 30s to your 40s, like this onset of midlife. She writes, midlife is when the universe gently places her hands upon your shoulders, pulls you close, and whispers in your ear, I'm not screwing around. All of this pretending and performing, these coping mechanisms that you developed to protect yourself from feeling inadequate and getting hurt, has to go. Your armor is preventing you from growing into your gifts. I understand, says the universe, that you needed these protections when you were small. I understand that you believed your armor could help you secure all of the things you needed to feel worthy and lovable, but you're still searching and you're more lost than ever. Time is growing short. There are unexplored adventures ahead of you. You can't live the rest of your life worried about what other people think. You were born worthy of love and belonging. Courage and daring are coursing through your veins. You were made to live and love with your whole heart. It's time to show up and be seen. Again, this is the whispering that the universe, that the divine, the source, your soul does at some point in around the midlife hour, helping you to begin the process of remembering. Now, if you don't, you will be presented with what Kabbalah calls a shattering. Right? Better to wake up to a whispering than a shattering. The shattering will come. It always comes. The question is, does it shatter us and leave us in a million pieces? Or does it shatter us and create openings within us to finally and fully remember? Shatterings, I call them the dark Ds. Divorce, depression, disease, death, disappointment, profound disappointment, the kind that comes with succeeding in your profession and realizing you've paid a price in your relationships and your marriage and with your children, or you make it to where you believed you wanted to go in your profession, and then what's that saying? You climbed the ladder of success to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall, or it just is no longer speaking to your soul, or maybe it never did. Whatever it might be, a shattering, a whispering, and then a shattering is all there to help you remember, who you are. I just read Glennon Doyle's book Untamed. If you haven't read it, it's a worthy book. I love the prologue. She talks about taking her daughter to go see a cheetah in one of those, captive environments, a zoo. It wasn't a zoo, but it was like a zoo. And she takes her daughter there thinking that it's going to be exciting, but describing this really depressing reality of watching the cheetah. I think her name was Tabitha. Watching Tabitha the cheetah looking like a caged animal, because it is a caged animal. Even as expansive as it was, the environment that the cheetah was in, it was still caged. And she describes how, and yet this cheetah, no matter, it was born in captivity. The owner, or the zookeeper, describes how the cheetah, Tabitha, isn't unhappy because she was born in captivity. And yet Glennon talks about how that's even more profoundly sad, because this wasn't supposed to be a caged animal. And yet Tabitha is prowling the perimeter of this space. And what Glennon describes is this uncaged, untamed, primal desire still there in Tabitha, and talks about how Tabitha, right, you don't have to live this way. You don't have to live in this caged environment. She says you're a goddamn cheetah. Talking about not just Tabitha, but her and our soul, and this whispering and this tug and this nagging that won't let us forget that we're a goddamn cheetah, that we are a soul, right, with this power and this purpose and this passion. No matter where you are in life, no matter how caged, boxed in your life might feel, and that's what happens around midlife, is you start to feel suffocated and you start to feel boxed in and quantified because your soul has been caged. It doesn't mean you throw open the cage and leave your marriage and leave your children and leave your job. Maybe that's your path, maybe it isn't. It's about shifting in the afternoon of life and remembering that cheetah within you, that fierce, fiery soul that is within you, that can't be named, that can't be tamed, that can't be boxed in. Again, maybe you leave your world. I counsel people not to. I counsel people to make their stand where they are, to figure out who they are, because otherwise you just take your bags with you to the next relationship, to the next job, to the next station in life. So better to deal with it where you stand and let that carry you wherever it might be. But it begins by remembering. The great mystic, the Baal Shem Tov, says, forgetfulness is the pathway to exile, but memory is the pathway to redemption. And that's what it means to shift and live in the afternoon of life, is to remember that we have been living in exile outside of our authentic self, outside of our soul. And if you want to find your way back in your life, through your life, to the life that you and you alone were put here to live, then it begins by remembering that you are a goddamn cheetah. So that's what I do. I work with people to help remember that they are a cheetah, to map that out, to figure out why they have forgotten it, to map it out as to where they are and where they want to go, and how to get there. If you would like to do this work of remembering that you are a goddamn cheetah and to discover it and unleash it, I would love to hear from you. Would love to offer you a complimentary consultation. I work with people, giving them a 30-minute consultation, no expectations on the other side of that. If you want to continue working, we'll work. But at the very least, it's an opportunity, 30 minutes, to awaken the cheetah within you. So it's about forgetting, but it's about remembering that you too are a goddamn cheetah. Take care.